Now that we have move, rotate, and scale, and tumble, and pan, and zoom figured out, that's 6 of the 9 essentials that I'm going to teach you today. The next set of things you need to learn right off the bat is what the components of a polygon are. The components of a polygon are this, and you can find them by right-clicking and holding on an object. It'll pop up this menu here. Notice we have edge, vertex, and face. These are the 3 components we have for each object. And I can go in and out of each mode. I can be in object mode, which I'm currently in, edge, vertex, or face mode. These other 3 we're not going to worry about right now. We're just concerned about edges, vertices, and faces. A face, for instance, is a whole plane between a set of edges, ideally 4 edges here. I can do the same things I would do on a whole object just to that face. Now that I have it selected, you can see that it's selected when it's orange. I can scale just that face. I can scale it in that direction. I can move it. I can rotate just the face, and that's the face component. Now I'm going to go right click on this object and edge. So an edge, we're getting smaller here. A face is a whole plane. An edge is just a single line segment that runs between 2 points. These points are called vertices, which we'll try in a second, but notice I can move just an edge, I can rotate just an edge, and I can scale just an edge as well in either direction. That's the edge component. Now the vertice component, and keep in mind with all these tools, with scale, it's not, because it doesn't have any dimensions, scale's not going to do anything. Also, with a single vertex, rotate is not going to do anything. But the move tool on a single vertex will do stuff, and that will allow me to manipulate that object with all of those, with one of those vertices. I can grab more than one vertice. I could grab like those top 2 here and move them up and down. When I have more than one vertice selected, it does start making sense to rotate them. And then I can also, of course, scale 2 vertices, and that will change the distance between them. So that's the basic tools for sculpting: move, rotate, and scale, tumble, pan, and zoom, so that we can get a better view. And then we're going to use edges, vertices, and faces in order to control the different components of our object. When we want to get back into object mode, we right click and select object mode, and now when we click our object, it's green again. I'm hitting Q to get rid of that tool, and now I can keep working with this thing. Notice it doesn't work quite right, and it has some weird creases in it. We're not worried about that for now. That's why this project is called the Ugly Project. We're going to make this thing actually as weird as we can as we go. Next thing we're going to do is we go through sculpting. We've learned those 9 essentials. Now we're going to get a little bit more advanced and learn these tools here. Under Edit Mesh in the Polygons submenu system, Edit Mesh has Extrude and Insert Edge Loop tool. It also has this button here that says Keep Faces Together. Notice Keep Faces Together currently is unchecked. I'm going to check it for what I'm going to do next. If I hit Edit Mesh and Insert Edge Loop, for instance, and I click on a single edge in the middle of it and drag, I haven't let go of my mouse yet, I can drag back and forth and decide where I'm going to add a new group of edges. These edges, of course, make faces and vertices. I can also scale that edge that I just created and expand it out that way. Very confusing object, but that's okay. I can hit G on my keyboard to repeat that last tool that I used, which was Insert Edge Loop. I can scale that guy in, for instance, and I'll do G again there, and then hit R to scale this out a little bit. Now I'm ending up with this kind of rocky lump of an object. And now that is Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop tool. It allows me to add more geometry. Remember, this thing started out as a cube, but because I've inserted edge loops and added vertices, edges, and faces, I can now manipulate many more vertices and edges and faces to sculpt that object and get it to look the way I want to. Edit Mesh, Extrude, for instance, I'll show you something you shouldn't do with Edit Mesh Extrude. If I go to vertex mode and select all the vertices of my object, I can do Edit Mesh Extrude, and it just does something weird. It just kind of explodes all the vertices out, and it doesn't make much sense what it's going to do. We're going to count that as one of our uglies. You need to make 6 of them, and I'm going to move that off to the side just because it's fun. And then I'm going to create some other ones. Create, polygon, primitive. Again, I'll start with a cube and we'll make something else. So that was Edit Mesh Extrude, but that's certainly not how Extrude is meant to work. I'll show you Extrude is most of the time done with faces and sometimes, rarely, with edges, but most of the time a whole face. Let me show you. Select this face here, Edit Mesh Extrude. I can pull up on that face, and notice it's another way to create more edges, more vertices, and more faces. If I hit Q to get rid of the extrude tool and then select this face over here, I can hit G to go to the last tool that I used, which was extrude, and pull out this face here, and then maybe select that face, hit G and pull up there, and maybe do G again and pull up there. While I'm extruding, I can adjust the size of the object. I can move it over to one side, and then I could do G again to do another extrude. Every time you do an extrude, make sure you pull it out. And also another thing to remember, when you do an extrude, like if I were to do an extrude and leave it there, it creates some kind of geometry that will cause you trouble later. Notice I can pull on this face right now, and even after the extrude, that extra face is still there, and that will cause you trouble in the future. Another thing that is a common mistake people make is they do Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop tool, and they'll click and drag a group of edges all the way to one end or the other. I'm doing it now, but that's actually a bad example of what to do. Now I have all these extra edges here, and if I go to face mode, I can pull these faces apart, and they kind of break the way that your geometry is set up, and we don't want to have that happen. So I'm going to do a little undoing to fix the object that I've created here. Whatever it is, it's all of its ugliness. And that was the extrude tool. Another weird thing about the extrude tool, if you uncheck Keep Faces Together and right click in face mode, I'll select all of these faces here and do Edit Mesh Extrude. Notice now when I'm doing extrude, I have many separate extrudes all going on at the same time. I'm going to pull them out just a little bit, scale them in a tiny bit, and that'll create all these weird little lumps all over this object. Now we're going to call that object done. Now we have 2 ugly objects that we've created. Oh, and we still have some errors up here. If you look closely, we have some errors from me inserting edge loops and doing extrudes that didn't work out. No problem, this is an ugly assignment. Never worry about how these objects are turning out. It's more about learning how to use these manipulation tools. A few more things to get you started using Maya here. Let's learn how to do a few more tricks with polygons. Create, polygon, primitives, cube. You'll notice I like cubes. Cubes are a very simple and nice and easy object to start with, and using cubes you can create really almost anything. It's a perfect place to start. You can hit F to frame in this cube. Another tool in the polygon submenu system that we're going to use is called Mesh Smooth. Notice when I smooth a cube, it almost turns into a ball. If I hit Mesh Smooth again, it'll get even rounder. There's still some lumpiness to the corners, but this is a very useful shape sometimes. I can do some fun stuff I've already learned there. I can take it in face mode, select all the faces on this object, and then I could do an Edit Mesh Extrude with Keep Faces Together unchecked, and this would allow me to pull this cube apart into this kind of sprayed out thing. Object mode, let's move this one aside. We'll count that as another one of our uglies. So I have this ugly here, and that one. Let's try a different primitive. For instance, polygon primitives. Let's go with cylinder. That cylinder's, notice it still meets the what Maya calls the requirements for a cylinder. It has a number of sides and a cap and a base, but that's not what you're used to seeing with cylinder. So I'm going to show you how to create a cylinder that's your own doing. So if I click on Create, Polygon Primitive Cylinder, you'll notice there's these little boxes over there. I call them the options boxes. So if I click on Cylinder and then Options box, you can see the settings I had there will start to make sense. The radius was set to 2, and these little lines on this grid here are each unit. So it was 2 units in the radius, and the height was 2, and the axis divisions was 3. Let's set that to something more rounded. Let's set it to somewhere near 20. And again, I'm going to click on Create. And just changing that one setting there, you can see that it changed the shape of this object. When I want to select components, I can select a single face. And if I want to select multiple faces like I'm doing now, I'm going to press and hold the Shift key as I move around. So press and hold Shift. Now I've selected every other face. Edit Mesh Extrude on those faces will allow me to have kind of a pattern like that. I'm going to put them in somewhere around there, and then use this tool here to taper them off in some sort of grid. So Shift is to add to your current selection, the Control key is used to remove from your current selection. So I'm going to right click, go to Face Mode, and I'm going to select all of the top faces because I want all the top faces selected. Notice it selected the top and the sides as well, and I don't want the sides, so I'm going to hold down the Control key and drag through all the sides. Now notice all the top faces are orange, meaning they're selected, and the sides and the bottom are not selected. I'm going to hit Edit Mesh Extrude, pull those faces up just for fun, and maybe just do a scale, hit R for a scale tool, and I'll taper those things in to get this kind of cog shape out of it. I'm also going to hit the Control key here and deselect those outsides and do another Edit Mesh Extrude to pull up these faces here, and then hit G to do another extrude, and then R to, I don't know, do something crazy there on top. You can do whatever you want. These can turn out any way you want. I'm going to call that my 4th ugly, and we'll move on. Get some other things out of the way here. If I hit Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube, I'm going to go with a smooth cube again. I'm going to hit Mesh Smooth, Mesh Smooth. And now I want to just select a few faces or a few vertices on one side. So I'm going to go to Vertex Mode, and I'm going to select one vertex. So I got this, well, one vertex right there at this end here. Now that I have that single vertex selected, I may want to just select a few more around it. So using the greater than key on your keyboard, or Shift period, it will expand the selection that you have. And if I hit Shift less than, it'll reduce your selection. So those can be really handy when you're trying to expand your selection from a starting point. Greater than and less than on the keyboard. So I got those few vertices selected. I'm going to move them out here, maybe use the scale tool here, and then in object mode, maybe I'll just grab some of these faces over here and scale them inside out, twist it around. I don't know. The whole point is to make this just an ugly, weird object, and I think that is an ugly, weird object. Now we can get on to the next part. Next we're going to put lights and a stage for all these crazy objects that we've made, so that we can show off our handiwork. So we're going to hit, to start creating those lights, we are going to click on Create, Lights, and Point Light. Now we have one point light over here. Remember, the channel box will let us know that our point light that translates, or its location, is located right at 0, 0, 0. If I hit Q on the keyboard over here, you can see that the light is centered on the grid. It's not rotated or scaled, and with a point light, since it casts light out in all directions, it doesn't need to be rotated at all. It won't make any difference for it. But that is our point light. If I hit 7 on the keyboard now, you can see how your scene is lit using this light. When I move the light back and forth, it changes the way the light hits the objects, and their shading will be affected by that light's location. So that's a point light. Create lights. Spotlight, as you can imagine, is more like a spot. It's kind of defined by this cone shape here at this end, and I can adjust that cone shape, not using this channel box here per se. Well, I guess I can. Your channel box will show it here as 40 degrees. If I hit it 60 degrees, you notice it's wider, and if I hit it 20 degrees, it'll be much narrower. And you can see right now it's really only lighting up part of this object here, and the rest of them are black because they're not being lit by the spotlight. Another light, create light. Ambient light is a light we'll use sometimes. Ambient lights are nice. They don't necessarily need shadows. I use ambient lights to fill in areas, and it'll just kind of generally fill in the backgrounds and that sort of thing. Similar to a point light, but with less harsh shadows. Create lights. One of the last lights here we're going to talk about is an area light. And an area light is an area light is it was just allowing me to adjust it through the camera there. It will show me kind of like a big fluorescent panel, like on the ceiling maybe here in this classroom. It'll show you how your light is lit from that point of view. That's an area light. We're going to use point lights for this project, but before we create our lights, we are going to create a stage before we create a final version of our lights. To create our stage, I'm going to go back to 6 because things are kind of weird. We don't have any lights right now. 6 is solid and 7 is with lights. So we're going to go back to 6 so we can finish up this project. We're going to create Polygon Primitives plane options box. And if I hit edit reset settings, it should look more like what yours does. But I want you to set the width to 50, the height to 50, the width divisions to 1, and the height divisions to 1. And then you'll notice here it says axis X, Y, and Z. Now a plane you can typically think of as being flat. So if you click on Y and then click on create, it'll make this big wide flat plane. Create Polygon Primitives plane again to the options box. If I hit X, create, and then go back there, plane options box, and then Z and create, I'll have 3 intersecting planes, which is just what I need for my stage. I'm going to put these items, and I'm going to move these planes around using the move tool so that all of these objects are in one scene. If I were to leave it the other way when I would go to render the final version, the background would just be black, and that would be kind of boring. So we're going to put all these objects together in this scene. Not happy with this object. I'm going to move him to the back, and I like this one better, so I'm going to move him over here. So go ahead and move your objects around on your stage how you want them to be in the final version. And feel free to scale some of your objects larger than others and move them around, get things looking the way you want to. But things just don't look quite right without color. So before we create our lights, we're going to create colors for our object. To do that, you're going to right click on an object, assign new material, and then for now we're just going to stick to 2 kinds of materials, blends right here and Lamberts. Blends, as you can see by the icon, are shiny, Lamberts not so much. So I'm going to have a shiny gear here, so I'm going to choose blend for that one. Now it's going to let me adjust the color. So here where it says color, I'm going to double click on the color swatch, choose the color that I want, and that color of green looks good to me. Click done, and now I can select another object, right click on it, assign new material, and I'll make this one not shiny. And double click on the color swatch, choose a color, click on done. And give each of your objects color. Right click, assign new material, we'll make that one shiny, choose a color swatch, double click on the color swatch, and done. Assign new material, Lambert, done. And just give these objects any color you want. You can arrange them any way you'd like as well. And now you're also going to need to give your walls and your floor a color as well. You can leave them gray. I just would suggest that you give them other colors. So I'm going to put both of my walls, my Y and my Z, or X and Z wall, I'm going to give them a new material, and I'm going to make it a Lambert, and it's going to be a bright yellow. And then I'm going to give my ground a new material. I'm going to make it a shiny red. Click on done. Now I've assigned all my objects with colors. They're going to stand out a lot better. Now I'm just going to do some final staging here, and then I need to prepare my camera for the final rendering of this object. So now that we have color, we'll pick up and create lights and prepare our camera for the final version of the rendering with shadows. Now that we have all of our objects created, that they're on a stage with planes here, and that we have that they all have the right positioning and that they're put where they should be, we're ready to create our final lighting. Now the lights we're going to use are going to be point lights. The theory behind the lighting we're going to use is called three-point lighting, and these lights that we're going to use with three-point lighting, these point lights, when I create a point light, I'm going to hit 7 on my keyboard and I move that light around. When all is said and done, there will be shadows, and if I have just one light, say off here to the side, all of these sides of the object, notice when I'm looking from this, is very dark and bleak and bland. So I need a light to illuminate that side as well. So I'm going to put another light, create light, point light, on the other side to fill in some of the darknesses that were created on the other light. So now I have this main light, or a primary light or key light here, and I have this light over here as a fill light. Both of these lights are going to create a lot of harsh shadows on the wall behind him. So I'm going to create a third light, create light, point light, and I'm going to move him back in the corner, leaving it kind of low, and this light here is called a backlight or a fill light. So now I have three lights. This one here, which is my backlight or fill light, this one here, which is my primary light, and this one is my fill light. I got that wrong. Let me try that again. This is the backlight or rim light. This is the primary light or key light, and this is my fill light over here. Now, right now, all of these lights, notice the intensity is 1 for the fill light, 1 for the backlight, and 1 for the primary or key light. I want only my primary key light to have the intensity of 1. Notice the color for my primary and key light is also white. I'm going to change that just a little bit. It's going to be almost white, but I'm going to pick a warmer color like yellow or orange, and it's going to be this kind of pastel color. For my primary light, I choose that. You can choose any color you'd want, but if you're doing regular lighting, always stay within the pastel colors. Do not choose big, deep, dark colors. They have quite a different effect and maybe might cause some unintended consequences if you're not careful. This is the fill light here. I'm going to make the color for the fill light something not warm, something more cool, maybe this blue over here, again with that color there. And then the intensity of this fill light is only going to be 0.7, so it'll only be 70% as intense as my other light. This light here double clicking on that one. This light is also going to be a cool light, but I'm going to choose something more purplish for that light, and the intensity of this light is only going to be about 0.3, much less intense light. So I have 3 different lights of 3 different colors, which can help bring out your objects and their coloring, and then I've arranged them in the positions of key, fill, and backlight or rim light. Now that I have those positions down, I'm going to set up my camera to get ready to render this scene in its final version. To do that, I click on View, Camera Settings, and I'm going to choose Resolution Gate. This will show me what is going to be rendered when I get my final version. Notice currently it has all this empty red and yellow space around it. I want to zoom into my object, and unlike taking a family portrait, don't be afraid to cut one of your uncles out of your picture. You can go ahead and zoom in nicely, give me a good close-up view. I don't want any of these far-away views, and I certainly don't want any view that includes seeing outside of this range. So let's frame this in nicely, and then we will do a test render. To test render, we're going to click on this guy right here, and he will render our objects. Notice my objects currently have shadows, and these shadows are showing up here on the ground. Yours may not have shadows, and mine have the wrong kind of shadow, so I'm going to make some changes here. All the shadows are included as a feature of the light, so I'm going to click on my primary light here, and I'm going to look at the Shadows tab. And in the Shadows tab, I'm currently using Depth Map Shadows, but I'm going to scroll down here, use Ray Trace Shadows, change my light radius to 1, and under my shadow rays, choose maybe, let's see, I'm going to choose this one is 5, and this one is 2 for my shadow rays and my ray depth limit. I'm going to set those other lights to the same setting. Clicking on my other light, notice this changed. I'm going to check that box, set my light radius to 1, shadow rays 5, and my ray depth limit to 2. Clicking on my third light way over there in the corner, use Ray Trace Shadows, light radius 1, shadow rays 5, ray depth limit 2. And now I'm going to do another test render of this scene. Notice there's no shadows, and the reason for that is I'm not doing any ray tracing. The light, the shadow type that I've used requires that the computer calculate the bouncing of the light particles or the photons as they bounce around the scene. Currently I don't have Maya software set up to do that. So to set up the render, now that my lights and shadows are set up, I click on this icon here. You can also find it here. This guy, to change my render settings. I'm going to click on Maya software and choose Mental Ray, and Mental Ray will allow me to adjust the quality. Under quality, I'm going to change to a production quality, and I'm also going to check the indirect lighting tab and then check final gathering. That will allow me to the image to look a little better. It'll take a little longer to render though. So zooming in again, getting nice and close to these objects. Let's do another test render and see how I like that outcome. Notice Mental Ray takes a lot longer to render. It's going to render in little chunks, but now without making any changes to the shadows are finally showing up. The shadows are going to be a much better quality than they were before. And that's what we want. Even though these objects are ugly, we want the render quality to be set nicely so these objects look really good when they're all done. So that's good enough. The shadows, there's a little bit of graininess. I could adjust these settings here and change that, or maybe some of my settings here, but this is going to be good enough for what I want. But the picture quality itself is not good enough. Notice here it says 640 by 480. That's a very small image. I want this image to be good enough to print out or maybe make a poster out of someday. So I'm going to click on this render settings and go back to here. And instead of these mental ray tabs here, I'm going to go to the common tab. It doesn't matter what renderer I use, mental ray or anything else, the common tab always stays the same. Scrolling down to the common tab, you can see that it says width 640, height 480. I'm going to change that to about 3000 by 2000, and that will give me a 6 megapixel, because 3000 times 2000 is 6 million or 6 megapixels for my final version. And then I'll click close, and I'm going to click render there. I won't bother you, but you can see that it's going to take a lot longer to render in that resolution, which is why I set it up in the other resolution first. And we'll use time-lapse to let that render finish. I'll show you the final project, but when that render is done, we need to save that image, and that's what you're going to hand in. That's what this assignment is a rendered picture of all of your ugly objects.